I didn't even know that bookseller is this like craft. And yet it is. That's what I've learned over the last 4 years of doing the show, that it's like it really is a craft, and that hand selling books to people, doing these kinds of recommendations are such a beautiful part of like our literary world.
Yeah.
And mostly they're like young people who are nerds and love books, and that's the nerd book loving job out there,
Welcome to The Stacks, a podcast about books and the people who read them. I'm your host, Tracy Thomas, and today I am joined by Alexis Madrigal. Alexis is a journalist. He is also an author. His new book is called The Pacific Circuit, a globalized account of the battle for the soul of an American city. The book is all about Oakland, California. Alexis lives there. I am from there. We dig into the city and our love for it, and also talk about how this book expands the lens on Oakland to tell a bigger story about the world. We also talk today about Alexis's other job, which is being a host of the Forum show on KQED radio in the Bay Area, his commitment to running an ultra marathon, and of course, all of the books that Alexis loves most. Quick reminder, everything we talk about on each episode of The Stacks can be found in the link in the show notes. The Stacks Book Club pick for August is Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants by Robin Wall Kimmerer. We will be discussing the book on Wednesday, August 27th with Alexis Madrigal. Quick reminder, everything we talk about on each episode of The Stacks can be found in the link in the show notes. If you love The Stacks, if one episode a week isn't enough, if you want inside access into the world of books and what I'm reading, I've got two awesome things for you to check out. One is Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/thestacks, you can join the Stacks Pack. You get bonus episodes. You get access to our amazing Discord community. You get to be part of the Mega Reading Challenge if you are so inclined. If you want to hear more of my thoughts about books, pop culture, and still get that bonus episode, head to tracythomas.substack.com to subscribe to my newsletter. Okay, now it is time for my conversation with Alexis Madrigal. All right, everybody, I am so excited. As you all know, I am from Oakland, California, and at least once a year, I read a book that is in Oakland, about Oakland, something Oakland related. And I say, you know what? Everybody else gets to talk about Oakland this month with me. And so today I am thrilled to bring you the Oaklandiest of Oakland books. This isn't just set in Oakland. This is a book about the town. It is called The Pacific Circuit. The author is Alexis Madrigal. He is here today. Welcome to The Stacks.
Oh my gosh. Such an honor. Big fan. First time guest. Thank you so much for having me in.
First time, long time. Okay. Before we dive into the Pacific Circuit, let's talk briefly about you. What's your story? Where are you from? What is your relationship to books? And then for me personally, when and why did you go to Oakland?
Yeah. So, I was born in Mexico City. I grew up first in LA, actually out in the Valley. Silmar, beautiful Silmar, California. Some may know it. And then we actually followed my Mexican grandma up to rural Washington State. And so I grew up in a little town of like 2,000 people called Richfield. Okay. I went to college. I wanted to be a fiction writer.
Okay.
I was a little football meathead for a little while in the early days of high school, but then I became a fiction writer. I wrote a novella for college, my thesis, and thought I was going to go down that road. But eventually I went into journalism in my 20s, largely because it turned out that I liked reading nonfiction books. I liked reading nonfiction essays. I was really into Harper's Magazine back in the day and the New York Review of Books, which I'm actually still into the New York Review of Books. My relationship to books now, I used to just go into Powell's bookstore in Portland, Oregon, and I would just go walk and smell and, kind of imagine what it would be like to have my name among the spines. I had a very dreamy, very romantic sense of what it was to be an author. Now I have a slightly grimier, more practical sensibility, in part because, my day job is I host this show called Forum on KQED. It's been on the air for 30 years. It's a call-in talk show. It's super fun. I love it very much. And a lot of what we do is we interview authors, and so I talk to all kinds of people all the time, whether it's like Washu and it's someone who's like about to win a Pulitzer Prize, or it's like a person who wrote like today, there was a lady who wrote a book about escapes from Alcatraz, who grew up on the island as the daughter of a prison guard, So I end up reading a ton of nonfiction mostly now, but like some fiction. And Oakland, the story there is I really love the Bay Area. And the second I hit the ground after college in 2004 with the ability to go somewhere, I went to San Francisco. My wife and I went to the East Coast. I was working for the Atlantic magazine. And when we came back, we settled onto a little street in North Oakland, and we've never left. That was like 15 years ago almost. So we know all of our neighbors, all the intergenerational connections, the whole kind of community here. And Oakland is really the only place that's felt like home to me of all the places I've ever lived. I love the people, most especially. I love all the different types and feels of the neighborhoods. I love just being able to go to all kinds of places and knowing people, I mean, when people call it the town, I personally think that should be reserved, for like special occasions, and people who really grew up in Oakland can call it that. But I think like thinking of the town as like, why do people call it that? It is that like, anytime I go out in Oakland to dinner or a drink or to the library or anything, I always run into people I know. And I love that. It does feel like living in a little town.
Okay. Just on that point, but then I want to go back to your radio show. In reading your book, one of my dear friends from high school, his dad is mentioned in your book, David Glover.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man.
And when I was reading your book, I texted my friend Drew, his son, and I was like, I'm reading a book and they keep bringing up your dad. And he's like, what's the book? I'm like, it's about Oakland, blah, blah, blah. And it was actually the day that I texted Drew about it. It was the day before David's birthday, and David since has passed away. So it was sort of like this moment. He was like, that's so crazy that you text me like this thing out of the blue. So, but I do feel like Oakland is one of those places. Like I could go, like I was at the Mississippi Book Festival and a girl walked up to me and was like, you're Brady Thomas's little sister. We went to Montera together. And I'm like, what? Oh my God. Like Oakland is certainly, I feel, considering like how it is a pretty major city, it definitely does feel like a town.
I mean, part of it is I always think San Francisco is like a city of the world. It's like part of the Pacific Rim. It's part of like the cosmopolitan archipelago of cities of the world. Oakland is like part of California. It's part of the West. It's part of the Bay. Like it is this. I think it's like it's a different organism from the organism of San Francisco, which I feel like is like a place people pass through. And Oakland is a place I think people want to stay, and if they're lucky, do get to stay.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to come back and talk a lot more about Oakland, but I want to talk about, because I never get to talk to people who also interview authors. How do you pick, or how does the show pick what books you're going to cover? What's the process there? How involved are you? And then, you work for a major radio station, not a small little backyard podcast. How are you doing questions? How much is it you? How much is it a team? Just let me fantasize about having a real job.
Your job seems extremely fun for what it's worth, but I would say that having a team is by far the best part of it. I have such a smart, cool, interesting team. And we all, every book that comes on the show, like 2 people have read it. Like that's kind of amazing, and I love that we do get the time and space. We make the time and space to read all the books. It's my second book that's come out, and having been on shows where it's like clear the host has read like 4 questions from a publicist and then just recites those to you, you're kind of like, ugh. What is the point of this, How do we select them? It is because it's broadcast in the Bay Area. That is like the number one kind of filter. Not every single book has to pass through that filter, but most of them do. So that's kind of like number one. I think I have like a real soft spot for histories. It's kind of the way my brain works is, I see something and I go, well, where did that come from? And I think there is something really, I think Oakland is a place that has really drilled that into me, because so like the the city doesn't make sense unless you have like this historical grounding of what happened over particularly the 20th century. And so we do a lot of that. We're also looking for talkers. We're looking for people who you could put on the air and they're going to like be funny and say stuff. And, they're going to be a little looser maybe than some others. And we actually have struggled with some fiction writers in particular because you're like, no, you're right. The best of you is on the page.
Right.
It's like, it's like hard to drive conversation. But I think, some of my favorites that we've had, aforementioned Washu, Ingrid Rojas Contreras, I think is amazing. Oh. I love when we have on San Francisco writers, especially because I do feel like the Bay Area scene of writers, we all know each other and it's very supportive and it feels like almost like the opposite of what I think about the New York literary world.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, we've had obviously a handful of Oakland and then broadly Bay Area writers on this show for obvious reasons, but also because the work is good. Like some people I've had on have been like, oh, I didn't even realize you were in the Bay. Obviously, of course you are. Okay. Can you, this is what I struggled with. I've been telling all the people in my life in Oakland about your book, my mom, my brother, my best friends. And then they're like, well, what's the book about? And I'm like, well, it's sort of like about Oakland, but also it's about it's called the Pacific Circuit. So it's about the Port of Oakland. So can you do a really good job of telling us what the book's about, not only for my listeners, but also so that now when I tell people about it, I can just, plagiarize your words.
Yeah. It is about Oakland's role in the development of the global economy and the impact of that economy on the people of West Oakland who are physically attached to the port through 7th Street, which is a historically incredibly important place and was the seat of Black life in the East Bay. So takes sort of the spine of the book as Margaret Gordon's life, who's an environmental justice activist in West Oakland, and kind of uses both her family's story of migration, from the kind of southwestern parts of the South to the Bay Area, as well as her subsequent life and activism as a frame for trying to understand Oakland's importance in the development of all these things and why it would be that, it would have this incredibly important container port in the 1960s and be the place that was the stronghold of the Black Panthers. Like those things are actually related, as well as it's the way that it acts as kind of this shadow of both like San Francisco as well as Silicon Valley, this place where those places are devoted to the future and developing this global economy. But like, where do those impacts actually land?
Right.
And so that's the story that the book tries to tell.
What is the Pacific Circuit for people who don't know? Because that's the title of the book. If the book is not called like Oaklandish or something, right? Like you're going to see this book and be like, oh, and also the subtitle doesn't have the word Oakland in it, which I thought was really interesting. So what is the Pacific Circuit for folks who haven't read the book yet?
Set of relationships that have really come to exist across the Pacific Ocean between basically these cities that are on the west coast of the United States that have become fabulously wealthy, San Francisco, Seattle, these places, and their technology companies, which control all of this production in Asia and then ship it back through the ports of America. And that is a complex and really like productive system that essentially produces everything that is Target. Like you go into Target, you pick up something on the shelf, it's like that is from the Pacific Circuit, right? And so the things that I found really interesting about that is you kind of need these like 3 elements that exist in the Bay. You need all this technology to control all that stuff, but it also is sort of where a lot of this stuff is produced. That's why when Donald Trump starts talking tariffs, Tim Cook is like, hey, Donald, let's talk about China, because that's where all their manufacturing is. And it's important to know that like Silicon Valley grew up by building that manufacturing model. Where a few white guys in Silicon Valley essentially control hundreds of thousands of workers spread across Asia. Like that is what technology companies that make any kind of hardware, that's what they do. And that's how the whole place started this fountain of wealth, which continues to spill out all over everywhere. And it also requires, the kind of like banks and capital represented by San Francisco. And it also requires the actual physical stuff to come to port. And that's what happens in West Oakland at the Port of Oakland.
And the Port of Oakland, for people who don't know, is like the biggest port.
Well, LA Long Beach is now the biggest.
Long
but
Beach
Oakland
is the
was
biggest
the
one,
first
right?
port of this kind. Yeah.
First of its kind. But it's major. It's not just like some little...
Yeah, no, it's a big deal.
Like Port of Oakland is like a big deal. I actually didn't know that until like relatively recently. You grow up in Oakland, you grow up with the cranes, like the dinos, that's what we call them. And like one of my dad's best friends worked at the port. Like I just didn't, when he said he worked at Sealand, I thought he worked at SeaWorld. Like I didn't know. I'm a kid.
Sealand is like the company that creates global shipping in its current form.
Some of the like social political history I knew, like the Black Panther stuff. I feel like if you're a Black kid from Oakland, like that's like you're born knowing that. Like you come out, you're like mommy, daddy, Black Panther's free breakfast. Like that's like what you're learning. So, but for people who aren't from Oakland or the Bay Area, why do you think this book is something that they should read or care about? Like, what is important for them to get out of this or to understand?
Yeah. I mean, this is to my view, this is the world. Like, this is how all of this, like, commerce works, I mean, take a place like Dallas, right? Very far from the shore. But basically, all of these goods, they come through, like, LA Long Beach. They get put on trains, and they get shipped right to the logistics centers of, like, Dallas, right? There's a kind of concept that scholars have floated of this kind of second self, right? So there you got one self that's going around and it's doing podcasts, alphabetizing your books, whatever you're doing. At the same time, there's this other self that's out there scavenging goods from all around the world, using labor from people all around the world in order to kind of create the things and products and services that we use to live our lives in this kind of modern technological society. And I think it's worth kind of like knowing the biography of that second self. Like, what's it doing out there? Oakland is a particularly charismatic place to tell this story from. But like, you could do the same thing in Newark. You could do the same thing in Long Beach. You could do the same thing in Seattle, Tacoma. You could do the same. I mean, it's all over the world. You do the same thing in Singapore. The reason, probably the core reason to do it out of Oakland is that the first person to really see the interconnection between technology industry and logistics and the way that people would actually live their lives was Huey Newton. Mm-hmm. And, Huey Newton's a very complicated figure, co-founder of the Black Panthers with Bobby Seale. There's a lot of things to say about him, but one thing that I think is wildly underrated is that, like, he was essentially a prophet of globalization. Like, he didn't want it to happen in the way that it was happening, but he recognized that it was happening. And one reason is that stronghold of the Black Panthers is literally on the same road as the Port of Oakland, which was the biggest at the time and most important and first container port in the world. And so you have, this incredible intellectual heft coming out of the Panthers, and you also have like the reality of the port. And that's why it's grounded there, but it goes from there to the world,
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think what's really cool about this book, and something that I actually struggled with when you and I were trying to pick what we would do for book club, we decided on Braiding Sweetgrass People. So be sure to read that with us. But, I was, as I'm reading your book, I'm like, Alexis could probably talk about The Color of Law, because this book has a lot to do with redlining and gentrification. Like, he could probably talk about, there's a book you mentioned that's like all about the shipping stuff. It's called like The Box. And I was that would be like a weird, interesting thing. There's a book you mentioned that's like American apartheid. Like, there's all these different kinds of threads that are running through this book in a way that, to me, I'm like, oh, right, this city, Oakland, is in a lot of ways a microcosm for the rest of most American cities. Maybe you don't have a port in your city. Maybe you don't have, these people. But so much, like, if you have Black folks in your city, this story, I feel like, fits into all of it. And it is this, and of course there's like the story of the Great Migration is also part of this book, and the story of, as you mentioned, the Black Panthers. And it's just like, to me, it's like about so many pieces of the American city story, right? Like, this is like a city book. This is a book for city people about city life. And like, there are rural elements, but so much of America is also about the city. Like, we rely on rural places and all of this, but like the story of the city feels so like American, maybe air quotes on that.
Yeah. I mean, a part of the reason for that is that, I basically wanted to tell a story about what happened to 7th Street. Like that was kind of this like core motivation to this book. The main character lives on 7th Street. Hugh Newton gets into this gun battle on 7th Street. The container port, begins literally down the road of 7th Street. And there's a, massive BART station, that's our public transit system in the Bay Area that gets plopped on 7th Street. All these like elements, urban renewal, the kind of, I almost feel like redlining undersells, the variety of tactics that were used to like both hold Black people there as well as like disinvest from those places. The Pullman porters said, had a big outpost there because the railroad station, which is the end of the Transcontinental Railroad, this stuff is like all like right there. It's all like you could walk from one end of this book's like main setting to the other in like 20 minutes, And yet all of those stories kind of pour out of that, It's a story of American race relations, the story of, logistics, the story of kind of radical politics and the way that it sort of is able to observe American life in different ways. It's a story of like the way that the American society has viewed Black women. I think like something that I think is so, for me, was horrifying in this book was like going back through different ways that people talked about leadership in Black communities during this kind of 50s and 60s era, where community leaders, largely Black women, were just absolutely vilified as being the problem with the Black community, as opposed to like a set of folks who were looking out for this community, matched up against like a power structure that's really is destroying these neighborhoods. I mean, that is what it does, and that's what was happening. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't intend to write a book that had quite this sweep, to be honest with you. Like that was not really what I was after. But it's what happened, and it's kind of the small version of it in a horrifying to contemplate way.
Yeah, well, that's sort of what I wanted to ask you about. So I think in your acknowledgments or your notes or somewhere at the end, you talked about how this book, you were working on it for like 9 years. And you also mentioned that there was a time when your book was on the rails and George Saunders gave you some advice. So I'm curious about that. Was going off the rails.
Yeah,
Sorry, on the rails, going off the rails. I want to know about that. But I want to know, like, what did this book start out to you as? And like, how did you get it to be this other thing? And also, maybe this is a separate question, but I'll throw it out now because I think it's part of this story. How did COVID impact or change what this book was going to be?
I mean, COVID was bad for every single in-progress book, I think that's for sure. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, that's part of how the book was off the rails. This book started out as like, trying to figure out the relationship between, the port and 7th Street. That was kind of it, in part because I had gone out on a ship. And, you have to imagine you're kind of clanging up the gangway, it's like the metal and stuff. And I got up into this ship and I was there, as kind of a media person. And I'm sitting in this like little tiny room, keep in mind, containers are being loaded and unloaded. These like cranes are swinging up these like 50,000-pound containers like a tote bag. All these things are happening all around. And then you go into the little tiny human space on this massive ship. And everyone in the room is like Filipino, There's like all the people, all the workers are Filipino, all the, the captain and those folks are Eastern European. And, it's just this wood-paneled room. It's like the only place dedicated to humans. I just was so taken by the strangeness of this world that we've built to deliver ourselves Target, And then like a ship captain came into the room, he's a big Russian guy. He's got his Marlboro Reds, and he sits down across the table from me because he's heard there's like a journalist on board, and he just like looks across and he goes, "What is your intent?" And I was just like, oh my God, I don't know. I don't have an intent. I've never even been on a ship before. This is like, more than 10 years ago. And I was just like, this world is crazy. The fact that this workspace, this workforce, the port itself and all the longshoremen, who do have this kind of rich interracial history in the Bay Area as one of the earliest integrated unions in the country. Also very far left, the joke being that the East Coast is controlled by the mafia and the West Coast controlled by communists. This is kind of like this is ILWU. The union is like super powerful in the 20th century in particular, and so there were just all these elements that I wanted to tell that story, the relation between that world, which felt like such a world apart that like people in Oakland, unless you're a longshoreman, never visit. And then 7th Street, this place which I knew had this, incredible legacy and also kind of sad current state, And so Miss Margaret ended up being the thing that tied all those things together, and that's sort of where the book went. Then, of course, I wrote like whole histories. I realized that like people would want to know about Silicon Valley. I wrote a whole history of Silicon Valley up through the 1960s, most of which got thrown out of this book. Because I didn't really want it to be a shadow history of Silicon Valley. I wanted to tell this story. And what COVID really did was I ended up working on a thing called the COVID Tracking Project, hundreds of volunteers generating data for all these things. And I really, the book was just like on the shelf for a couple of years. And during that time, there were all of these logistics snafus, which kind of revealed the weaknesses of the system. People may remember there were all these ships piled up out to the port of LA Long Beach. There were shortages of various goods. All these things were happening in this kind of logistics world. And so it just, the book was changing and moving. And most importantly, this is a long answer, but most importantly, Oakland had been rapidly gentrifying. It was like a bomb was going off that was draining Black people out of Oakland, out of West Oakland. And through and after COVID, Oakland had a lot. We've just been in a hard place, I feel like there's been if you thought gentrification was bad, don't worry, it could get worse. You could sort of maintain the high housing prices, but lose all the stuff that people thought was going to come with gentrification. And so the book has to reckon with the fact that Oakland both is like a poster child of gentrification, but also a poster child of the failure of gentrification, and also a poster child of the failure of anti-gentrification efforts as well, Like we somehow ended up in this place where we've displaced so many people, and yet the city is not a crime-free, sparkling, happy place. It still is struggling with just a variety of budgetary, public safety, and other social problems.
Yeah. I'd never kind of connected the link between the end of redlining and gentrification. And you do that in the book. And that was actually the moment where I was like, okay, I think Alexis should come on the podcast. I was like, okay, I'm in. He's got me.
Good.
I won't spoil that for people, but I mean, it's not a spoiler, but just like, it's just an interesting moment in the book. Okay. What did George Saunders say to you? What was his advice?
Well, I was interviewing him for a thing in San Francisco called City Arts and Lectures. And, he'd been on the show and, had it would be a stretch to call George Saunders a friend, but he was like a guy that I had like friendly relationships with in this sort of host-guest kind of format.
Yeah.
And I was reading back his first book, and I think it's at some point in that, maybe it's in the acknowledgments or something, he says something about before that book was published, he was like watching his writing career drifting away, into the horizon. And my book had been really stuck at the publisher. COVID was a big part of that. There's a big backup of books, like all these things were happening. But also it was like a big book, and I think it was like the editor was kind of having a hard time getting his arms around it, and I was really worried that it just wasn't going to get published. And so, we were kind of sitting there before the show in this big empty auditorium, and I was like, man, I'm going through this thing. Sorry to dump on you, George Saunders, but I was really, when I read this part of your book, I was really feeling it. I feel like I'm watching my writing career, 10 years of work are just like drifting away into the sunset, and I don't know what is going to happen, And he was like, tell your editor I want to read the book. And I was like, okay. It sounded like a ploy from like a George Saunders novel, but I did, and it helped redirect the attention of my editor back to the book, things started to really get back on the rails. Things started to go along. I got to send George Saunders happy updates about all the things that were going on, and eventually sent him the book and all that stuff. And it was just, kind of, he's like known kind of universally as like a kind person. You hear that from everybody. But also like, after the show, I wasn't actually going to take him up on using this ploy. But at the end of the show, like he literally gave me a hug and was like, do the thing. Come on, it's going to help, And I was just like, man, what a guy. Like just what a just.
That's actually such a great story. I love that. That's very cool. Okay, we have to transition from talking about the book to talking about your reading taste. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back. Valentine's Day is upon us, and I've got love on the brain. Love for books, duh, of course. Hello. Did you forget what podcast you're listening to? I love bringing you all great reads, exclusive author interviews, and behind-the-scenes book gossip. But I can only do that with your support over on Patreon and Substack. Our Stacks Patreon community, also known as the Stacks Pack, is where you can go for book club meetups, a private, very active Discord, and a year-long mega reading challenge to help you achieve all your reading goals. Plus, you also get that monthly bonus episode. Now, over on the Substack, you can subscribe to my newsletter, Unstacked, where I keep the book conversations going. I also give you a healthy dose of sports and pop culture, definitely some hot takes happening over there. And again, that bonus episode. If you don't have a few dollars to spare, don't worry. There are free options on the Substack and the Patreon to get you a little extra Stacks magic. Making this podcast is a total team effort, and by supporting my Patreon and my Substack, you allow me to support my amazing team that makes the show possible every single week. So if you or your friends are looking to meet other book lovers and support this indie podcast, come hang out with me on Patreon, Substack, or both. I would love to have you. And since we're talking about love, you can gift subscriptions to the Patreon and the Substack for that special reader in your life. For the Stacks Pack, head to patreon.com/thestacks. And for the newsletter, head to tracythomas.substack.com. And also, there are links to both in the show notes. Okay, see you in the Stacks. Okay, we're back. Before we get to your answering all of my Stacks questions, we do something here called Ask the Stacks, where someone has written in for book recommendations, and I'm going to read what they wrote, and then you and I are going to come up with a handful of recommendations.
Oh, I love this.
Okay, so this comes from Annalise, and they say, I'm hoping you can help recommend some reads for my husband. He's a nonfiction reader that loves books that dive into niche or specific topics and processes. I don't know.
Why'd you give me this one, Tracy? I'm just kidding.
It actually was the top on my inbox. I try not to tailor them too much to the guest, to be honest, because I also don't know. Sometimes I'm like, oh, I used to tailor them, and then sometimes we're going to be like, oh, I don't read those kind of books. I'm like, you literally wrote that. And they're like, yeah, I don't really read it though. Anyways, so here's what Annalise, this is the end of it. She says, some recent faves include The Barn, Charlie Hustle, The Pardon, Shine Bright, 5 Days at Memorial, Monsters, and Into the Raging Sea. He's open to anything, but is interested in whiskey, basketball, music, and any sports or sports adjacent scandals. So that's kind of a lot of things. Is anything popping to your head, or would you like me to go first?
What I was going to recommend to this person I was going to recommend Other Minds.
Oh, the John Rosen.
It's got octopus in it. It's about the sea, but also the guy is like it has this kind of Peter Godfrey Smith is his name. This kind of Australian, scuba diver, swimmer kind of guy. It has all these like little encounters. So it has like a little bit of that sport edge or that like embodied sensibility, but also it does get into all this wonderful niche stuff, like what the cuttlefish is thinking and how different brains work. And I think this guy would like that one. That'd be my right off the top. And I have one other one.
When you said Other Minds, I actually I was thinking of The Best Minds. Do you know that one?
No.
It was like, it came out maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it's the guy seems to be like Jonathan Rosen, and it's about his friendship I wasn't prepared to talk about this, so I don't have notes, but it's about his friendship with a guy in college. They maybe went to Harvard or Yale or something. And eventually the friend ends up killing his girlfriend. And so it's about like schizophrenia and mental illness, but also it does have this sort of crime element. Not a sports scandal, but it is definitely a scandal. But it's like a big chunker of a book that kind of does a lot of the weeding, braiding stuff. The original book I was going to recommend, though, was Love and Whiskey. And it's the subtitle is The Remarkable True Story of Jack Daniels, His Master Distiller Nearest Green, and the Improbable Rise of Uncle Nearest by Fawn Weaver. And this is a book about how Jack Daniels had a black guy who was the mastermind behind all of the distillery and made Jack Daniels. And the Uncle Nearest brand.
Surprised?
Yeah, exactly. And the Uncle Nearest brand of whiskey came from this guy Nearest Green. So it's the story of these two people who work together. And obviously the black person nobody knows. And Jack Daniels is, as you're familiar, Jack Daniels.
Yes. Yeah. Unfortunately familiar with Jack Daniels. Yeah. The the other book that I'm going to recommend, this is a good one. This is right on the nose, I think.
Okay.
The book is called Boomtown: The Fantastical Saga of Oklahoma City, its chaotic founding, its purloined basketball team, and the dream of becoming a world-class metro by Sam Anderson. That book is super fun. And also, maybe one of the greatest crimes in NBA history is stealing the Seattle Supersonics and sending them to Oklahoma City. So that would be my other recommendation.
That's a really, really good one. Okay, my last one is that book, Born to Run. Did you ever read that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so it's about
I probably
running.
should. I am a runner. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I loved it. It's about running, and it's about this like guy, and he goes to run with ultra runners, and he learns about, it's a little bit like white savior-y. He like goes to this community and they're indigenous people and they run and they're barefoot, whatever. But also he does the history of like the running industry. So how Nikes became Nikes and running shoes and like being a jogger and that whole thing and how that rose culturally. And this is actually the book that I read when I first started running, because I'm the kind of person that will get an idea and be like, I'm going to run a half marathon, having never run more than a mile. And I was like, okay. Mr. Stacks was like, that's my husband. Mr. Stacks was like, you should read this book. It's so good. And I read it and I was like, I'm a runner. I'm locked in. But it's really entertaining. I do think, and I've never gone back, there might be some scandal or something weird attached to the author now. So if he sucks now, I'm going to rescind my recommendation. But when I read it in 2010, I loved it. I have not revisited. So if he sucks, if he's a monster, like I'm not team, I think his name's like Chris McDougal. I'm not team that guy. Okay, so those are our recommendations for your husband, Annalise. If he reads any of them, let us know. Everybody who wants a recommendation, email askthestacks@thestackspodcast.com.
Chain Gang All-Stars. Yeah. That's the other one. If you want fiction,
Chain Gang All-Stars. But that's not nonfiction, but that book is so good.
That's true. I know. But that one's so good. And it's a sport book.
It is sport. It is the worst sport ever. And we love Nana here. So we're Chain Gang All-Stars, all-time recommendation. Anyways, askthestacks@thestackspodcast.com. Email us. We'll do this for you. Okay, Alexis, you're back in the hot seat. 2 books you love, 1 book you hate.
Okay, 1 book I love. Oh, boy. This is... I knew it was coming. I should have been prepared more. I can do my book that I hate. And it came out of my book research. Tom Wolfe's book of essays called Mau Mauing the Flatcatchers. I absolutely despise this book. It is wildly racist. Tom Wolfe is an amazing prose stylist, and it makes it worse, not better, when you're that good of a prose stylist and you're being racist. I tried to re-report some of it for the book because a lot of it is set in these are supposedly nonfiction essays. Set war on poverty stuff is set in San Francisco, and it's just racist about everybody. Samoans, black people, everybody. It's just like and also when I was trying to re-report it, I discovered that I more or less like could not find any of the facts. I couldn't fix any of the facts that he supposedly had for these different organizations that were involved with war on poverty. I went to archives all over the state. It was so annoying. So it's not only that it was racist, but also I think some of it is made up. That's my theory.
I love this.
Okay,
Wait,
so that's
really
my
quickly
hate.
before you go to the two books you love,
Yeah.
did you read The Power Broker as part of your research for this? Because it feels like that would be
like
something
everyone
you would
else. I
read.
read the first 2 chapters of The Power Broker. I think I got up through maybe when he was in college. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a long book. I did think about it, but I cannot claim to have read the entire Power Broker. Definitely not.
I can't do it. I want to do it. I want to be a person who's done it. I can't do it.
I cannot do it. I cannot. I cannot do it. I cannot do it. Okay,
Do
so
you
I'm going to
love?
give you, books I love. This one is like maybe too obvious, but it is my favorite book, Parable of the Sower, Octavia Butler. I've gone back to it over the years, about every couple of years, and every time I'm just like, damn this book. It is so good, so interesting, and I always find new elements of it. And I actually, weirdly, the Earthseed components. This is the religion that's invented by the main character in the book. I actually find it like an actual spiritual credo for myself. Like I think I might be an actual adherent to it. Both like the simple parts about it, of how God has changed. It's all that exists. Which I think is actually a really deep insight about what it is to be alive and all living things. And also the parts about sort of no matter how hard and post-apocalyptic the world is getting, you kind of do have to keep yourself focused on like, what is the point of humanity? What's the point of being alive? And what is the point of like trying to do some massive collective enterprise, which in that book is, going to the stars, but I don't think it has to be that, And people always, people in that couple of books think it's so crazy that, in this post-apocalyptic world, Lord is like, no, let's go to the stars, but she sticks with it, she's like, no, this is actually part of it. And I find that part of Earthseed really beautiful. So that would be it on the other book. And I feel like all of Ross Gay's, books, like the Book of Delights, and Inciting Joy and all those little essayette kind of books, I just love them all so much. I listen to him when running sometimes, and I just laugh out loud. And particularly such a great reader, when he's reading those in the audiobook, the Book of Delights and the Book of Even More Delights, or whatever it is. That would be my other one.
I love it. We've done both. We've done a book by Ross Gay and Parable of the Sower for book club here. So,
Oh yeah,
but we did one of his poetry books, which I really struggled with because it was not short and delightful. His poems are long. That is hard for me. I was struggling. No lie, no secret here. People know I was like, I don't get it. These poems are 8 pages. Like, what am I supposed to do with this information?
That's so funny.
But I did read the Book of Delights. What's the
Yes.
first one? The Book of
I
Delights.
think Book of Delights is the first one. Yeah,
That's
the
the
first
one I read, and that is delightful. And he's so
Oh.
good.
It's so human
poems were
and
hard.
lovely. And you just want to live in that. I just want to live in that world,
Yeah, no, I get it. What's the most recent book you read that was just great?
Well, it's the book that I'm reading actually right now, and I'm really loving. Gary Steingart's latest book is fantastic. It's called Vera. I'm loving that book, and I would say that it's just great, like great in that way where I'm just like, this is just so nice to read a book that is a novel that's well constructed, that feels really wonderful, So I would say that one.
Okay. And are you a person who can read multiple books at a time, or are you just reading this Vera book?
No, I have to. In fact, I'm almost always reading multiple books. So I am reading that book, and I am also about to start, as soon as we get off this call, Mary Roach's new book, advanced reader copy of that book.
And how do you divide your reading for work versus reading for pleasure? Is it like I read certain things during this time, or?
I try and just read it. I honestly, I try and make all the books that I really want to read books we do on the show.
Same.
And then for other things that I'm researching, like my next book is a book about running and consciousness. So I have a whole bunch of things in that realm. Those are the things that I separate out because they can wait. You know what I mean? Like I don't need to be reading them at any one time. And so I tend to like stockpile those. And then when I have a little bit more free time or I don't have books to read for the show, then I go into those. Yeah.
Got it. A running book. Okay. Well, now you have to read.
I know. It's on that is on my TBR. And I've read a bunch of other running books. I just don't like them very much.
I don't either. That was the only one I bought, or someone bought me the like Murakami, and I just never wanted to pick it up.
Only, you know what? I'll give you the hot tip on Murakami. Just read the ultra marathon chapter out of that. Read chapter 1 where he's talking about running in a jazz bar in Tokyo, and that's like very charismatic. And then the ultra one is the only good chapter about running, actually, I think, in that book.
Thank you. Honestly,
yes, that's it. I'm saving you. That's the edit. That's the edit. Right,
I don't even really run anymore like that. I'm like an indoor treadmill sprinter type person now. Like
Are you Peloton treadmilling?
I do Orange Theory. So that's all, like the max you run is for 23 minutes. So it's all like speed work. It's I don't go outside and I did one marathon and now I'm like, great, did it, done.
Yeah, I did it. Yeah, check that off. Yeah, I'm actually preparing for my first ultra marathon right now.
Ultra, what is that, 50?
I designed myself. I think they call ultra anything that's more than 26. But this is going to be, for Bay Area, anybody, the top of Mount Diablo to the top of Mount Tam.
And how many miles?
It's like 50 some.
Holy.
Yeah. I'm like definitely feeling it. I've been running like 70 miles.
What do you listen to on your runs? Playlist, audiobooks, podcasts, a combination? How are you training for that?
Well, I listen to a lot of the books for the show on it, but on all my long runs, this is freak shit. Sorry, can I swear on this? I don't know. It's podcast,
yes.
Right? Yeah. I decided, because I'm trying to. This is a book about running. This is a book about consciousness. So, like, look, what does it feel like inside when you're running?
Oh, so no! So you're not listening to anything.
I'm going to raw dog the long runs. So nothing, no audiobook, no music, just me and the open road. And it is occasionally I love it. Sometimes I'm like, I'm tired of myself. I don't want to be in here anymore. Get me out of here. Get me out of here. Yeah.
That sounds so horrible, Alexis. Like, truly, in a way, to me, that sounds like punishment, because it is just running. And like, honestly, for me, the first 2 miles were always the worst.
Oh,
and the
easily,
thought
definitely.
of like the first, 15, 20 minutes, just me being mad that I'm running. I don't think I'm running an ultra. I think I'm running 2 miles maximum for the rest of my life, because I'm not getting past it. I can't even imagine. Oh my God, nothing. Just nothing.
But I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for you and all other runners, to observe myself, like what's happening in my brain, what's happening in my body. I have some like somewhat out there biological theories about our ability to communicate with the different systems of our bodies. And I actually think there's going to be science about this eventually. So I'm like checking in with all the different parts, and I'm, I'm doing all this stuff.
I love this
but
for you.
It's insane. It's insane.
Wow, I'm obsessed with this. Now I'm like, oh, should I start a podcast that's about running so we can keep doing this and stop talking about books?
Two versions.
How long does a race like that take you? Is it like 8 hours, 10 hours, 15?
It's going to be like 15, 20 hours.
Oh my God.
And the other weird, again, more freak shit, you have to learn all this stuff about yourself. Like, in particular, your sweat rate. How many liters of sweat per hour you lose while running. And so you have to weigh yourself at the beginning, weigh yourself at the end, subtract out any water that you drank and all this stuff. Because if you're going to run for 15 hours, think of how many liters of sweat that is. Because it varies among humans between, a few hundred milliliters, and like me, 1.5 to 2 liters. So think about per hour. So you've got to ingest gallons of water during a run like this. It's got to have tons of electrolytes in it, because you're losing about. I went and got my mineral content of my sweat. Feel free to cut all this from the podcast.
No, I love this. This is all I want. Okay, but wait,
I got the mineral content measured.
First and foremost, how are you transporting gallons of water while you're training? Because obviously, like on the race, they're going to hand you things.
Well,
but
I'm self-crewing. So my neighbors, again, I'm deep in this Colby-verse that's on my street in Oakland. My neighbors are crewing it for me. I'm doing it solo. So I'm going to be carrying 3 liters of water on my back at any given time. I've built some refill points in. They're going to meet me at certain spots with some more, because you're eating a ton too. Just for those who've ever dieted, this is insane. In a lot of these races, ultra runners are putting between like 60 and 100 grams of carbs in every hour.
Wow.
So you're just pounding carbs in the form of whatever your stomach will accept.
I'm also putting 60 to 100 grams of carbs in every hour reading books. I just want people
That's
to know.
right. Well, that's work too.
I am carb loading because at any moment I might need to run an ultra marathon, so I need to be carb ready.
Infinite
what are you
breadsticks.
eating? What are you eating?
What are you eating? Mostly these weird gel things. This is brand Martin's, but there's a gel that exists for everyone's taste. And I'm starting to work on eating other stuff because over 18 hours, I think it can be tough. So I'm going to eat some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches I've tried, which I really liked. Although a lot of real ultra runners would be like, no peanut butter, leave that out of there. Just get the carbs in there from the bread and the jelly. But mostly it's these packets. Yeah, do you ever see the movie Snowpiercer? It's like about the end of the world. It's the last train on Earth, and then they turn all these bugs into this like slurry that all the poor people get. That's kind of what it's like.
Okay, I used to do the like goos or the gels or whatever that like whatever the for regular
goos are gross
runners who
though.
aren't
Goos are like
crazy.
toothpaste. I just can't even handle them. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And then I realized that they were giving me intestine issue. Like it was making my bowels not great. I'll leave it at that. I have heard recently one of my favorite candy snacks is really big with runners, nerd clusters.
No, really?
Yes, it's like the new thing
clusters.
because it's basically the same as like a goo or a gel.
It's a goo.
Just
It's just
sugar.
You're just eating sugar.
It just tastes good, whatever. And if you're not running, like you need a certain level of nutrients that most people don't need for a 3 to 5 hour run. Like if you're running a marathon and you're in that range, you don't really need a full whatever. It's fine. You'll be fine. And so these are, I guess, and they're easy to pop. They're easy to pack. You can just throw them in your pocket or whatever. So apparently this is the new running snack. And I was like, I'm going to get back into running so I can eat even
just
more
so you
of
can
these.
pound some nerd clusters. Yeah. Nerds are one of those things that I so deeply associate with middle school that actually I think my armpits are starting to sweat just thinking about nerds, just because I'm thinking about the social shame of 7th grade,
Oh my God. Well, nerd clusters, they're the new generation, and it's time for you to own your shame and step into your confidence and eat those and feel proud. And if nerd clusters want to sponsor this podcast, I'm available for any product.
Yeah. Nothing I accept about myself can be used against me, right? A little Audre Lorde defense for 7th grade.
That's right.
Yeah, you're right.
I think she actually wrote that thinking about nerd clusters.
Thinking about
sort of
nerds
like that's how I read it the first time. Okay, we got to go back to books.
Okay, sorry.
Everyone listening, I'm sorry, but you listen to this podcast because I'm going to get to snacks, and so we had to get there. What is a book that you love to recommend to people?
I really have been having a fascinating time recommending this book, Is a River Alive by Robert McFarlane. And I like recommending it in part because I actually struggled with it. I also interviewed him. I really, it kind of changed me a little bit in a weird way. Like it reconfigured something inside me, even though I didn't love every part of the book in an interesting way. It's because it's basically about how to think about what a river actually is and the relationship between environments, like a river and the life around it and human beings as part of all that. And I thought I knew enough about that I wouldn't enjoy the book. But, then after I read the book, with my one little tiny vacation, sans kids, I went to visit the Klamath River because these dams had just come down and I wanted to see the river. And I was like, where did that come from? That's from this book, The other book, you've had them on already, but the other book I love to recommend to other men is Carva Wallace's book, Another Word for Love. I think it's so hard to find books about masculinity that say anything interesting at all I mean, literally at all. I'd take anything, one nugget, just a paragraph, and like Carvel's book has like 30 things like that in it. So I love recommending that. And I'm just cheating by keeping going. Ada Limon's poetry books. I love, for people who think they don't like poetry, boom, Ada Limon. You're going to love it. You have to. It's required. It's like stipulated. It's like just a contract with America.
I love that. Okay. Do you have a favorite bookstore?
Oh boy. I know a lot of bookstore people here in the Bay Area, so this is tough. But my wife and I are opening up a little community space that is next door to East Bay Booksellers here in Oakland on College Ave. So I would say East Bay Booksellers. But here's the thing that I would say. There's so many fascinating types of bookstores in the Bay Area that I like. It's why I couldn't leave. Like our bookstores, you want feminist reading? We got Womb House books, whole feminist bookstore. You want sort of like a big cavernous kind of bookstore. You can go down to like Kepler's or whatever. There's like all the Point Reyes bookstore if you want to get into some nature writing. Marcus Books, one of the oldest Black bookstores in the country. There's all of these different places that are all doing different stuff, and but they're like booksellers. I do events all the time with Green Apple Books. They each like take. I didn't even know that bookseller is this like profession, this craft. And yet it is. That's what I've learned over the last 4 years of doing the show, that it's like it really is a craft, and that hand selling books to people, doing these kinds of recommendations are such a beautiful part of like our literary world. They make it worth being a part of the world of letters,
Yeah. I mean, bookseller is, I don't know, it's not the exact same, but I feel like they're like nurses in some ways. Like it's like they're the people who are on the ground taking care of you, listening, responding to your desires and your needs and your anxieties and whatever it is, in the way that like the doctor's just not doing that. Like the doctor might show up and hear you out, but the nurse is like, oh, I'm so sorry. You want red Jello, not orange Jello. And like, I am listening to you and I care enough to help you. And it's like a certain, it's like takes like a kind of person. I big fan of booksellers around here for obvious reasons. What's the last book that made you laugh?
I'm going to say What is Queer Food by John Birdsall.
I just saw this in the bookstore for the first time the other day.
Yeah, I thought it was really funny, really an unusual kind of book, as maybe the title kind of gives away. It's this, a guy who'd worked in kitchens, but also has written about food for a long time, really trying to make sense of kind of the relationship between, hospitality and cooking and food with this kind of queering of culture as a gay man. It's just he's just a funny writer. It's like one of those things where it's just some people are just funny, and that's it. I mean, his Gary Steingart book is pretty funny too. And actually, in a totally different vein, Casey Johnston's book had some funny moments too. This is a book called A Physical Education, which is sort of about her journey to getting swole. And I thought that had some good moments too.
What's the last book that you read where you felt like you learned a lot?
Oh, this is I feel like this happens a lot, but I'm going to shout out this particular book, How Infrastructure Works Inside the Systems That Shape Our World by Deb Chatra. Ooh. Such an interesting book. They're an engineering professor, so smart, so interesting. And it's just like a lot of stuff that you just kind of like, oh yeah, how does a water system work? You're just like, you don't necessarily think of all those things, and so that is one where I feel like I learned a lot, and I feel like I knew about some of those things, and it was still amazing. Yeah,
I want to read this. This looks like a book I would love. I love a micro deep divey.
Oh yeah.
What's the last book that made you angry?
Oh. There's so many things to be angry about these days.
I know.
Aren't there?
You could take that question in any direction that sparks joy for you.
I think the book that I'm going to say here is a book called Sex is a Spectrum by Augustine Fuentes, who's an American anthropologist. And the reason it made me angry is not just because I sort of have a non-binary kid in my life, but just a sense of how much scientists, while posing as completely objective observers of the natural world, have been shaped by their times and circumstances to kind of weed out all kinds of queerness and non-binariness of different kinds across scientific disciplines, and that this queerness, it's just left out in ways that are invisible unless you really, really deep inside it and can sort of demonstrate that. And so I would say that would be a book that the book itself didn't make me mad, but that what it was pointing towards was very upsetting. I mean, I could also, all of Rebecca Solnit's books, they're good for this too.
Sure. Okay, what about, do you have a problematic favorite book?
I do. I like David Foster Wallace. I'm sorry, everyone. I do. Okay. We don't have to talk about it, I promise. I thought Brief Interviews with Hideous Men was totally brilliant, and I think about it like once every 3 days.
I've never read any David Foster Wallace, not because I'm better than you, but just because it did not interest me. But now I'm like, maybe I should read it if it's actually good.
You don't have to. I'm not trying to press it on anyone, Yeah. I gotta, it's like hidden. It's like, hidden inside the other books in the bookshelf at this point. I feel like just because it's become known as a thing that like sad literary men like to detain people talking about.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right to hide it. Nobody will know. Nobody will know.
It can just be me, you, and all the Stacks listeners.
Yeah, the Stacks pack and us. That's it. Okay, if you were a high school teacher of any subject you want, what is the book you would assign to your students?
I'm really torn. I'm torn between doing Leaves of Grass, but people already know that book. But I actually went back to it recently after not having looked. Whitman, I was like, and I went back to it and I was struck by new things in it now. But I won't do that one. I'm going to do this book by a neuroscientist called Searching for Memory: The Brain, the Mind, and the Past. It's by a guy named Daniel Schachter, who's a cognitive neuroscientist. And here's why. I think people have weird ideas about what memories are. Like, I think people think of memory like computer memory, like it's something perfectly stored, as opposed to something that's kind of generated, like our memories use all of our sort of brain systems we use to create the world around us. And they use that to recreate what happened to us in the past so that we can learn from it and use it. I mean, I think that's its evolutionary purpose, at least. And I think particularly at that age where times are burning so bright and so many things are kind of getting fixed and you're starting to believe that, certain things about yourself, I think like destabilizing that sense, that we are some fixed person, because at least in my experience, the worst people are those who stopped changing when they were in high school because they think it's cringe to be different at 40 than 18. And so I think that would be my like, if let's pretend I'm a high school biology teacher, I would go back and I would use that book to sort of like destabilize the idea of memory and self.
I love this. Okay, I have two more for you really quick. One is, and I only ask this question of journalists because they're the only people I actually care about this for. Are there any books, or is there a book that you feel like influenced your professional career or inspired you to want to be a journalist?
For Better or Worse, Evicted by Matthew Desmond. What a book. God
what a
damn
book.
It.
I mean, I feel like everybody says that book who it does like any narrative nonfiction. And I just feel like, sure, I get it.
I mean, you know why? It's perfect. That's why. I mean, it is a perfect nonfiction book. There's almost no perfect nonfiction book. I mean, that's one thing that I really believe, having read many, many of them for my job now. But that one was the reporting, the content, the actual writing, that lady in the trailer park eating lobster with her last food stamp dollars, like just every part of it. I thought it was perfect, and was at a point where I was considering doing this book, the book that ended up writing, Pacific Circuit, and I think for better or worse, influenced how I did it.
Have you ever talked to him?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I've been out drinking with Matthew Desmond.
I feel like people really like him. He seems like everybody who has met him thinks he's very cool.
He's very cool. He's like, I think he was someone, you're an academic writing a book about eviction. You do not think that's going to happen. And I think he's always kept that front and center, like the American lottery, like he's never been like, I don't think he's someone who believes I wrote the perfect book and that's why it hit the lottery like this, I think he knows it's good, but not, and it's not like false humility. I just think, he's like, listen, man, I could have written that book and 20 people could have read it,
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. When I read the second book, The Poverty by America, I think in my review, I said, this book really smacks of someone who is using their previous book success to say the thing they actually wanted to say in the first book, but maybe couldn't or shouldn't have said. And was like, so here's what I've learned. Fuck you and your capital gains tax, and you can suck it.
Yeah.
Okay? Like he was like, I already have the Pulitzer. I don't fucking care.
Yeah.
Does he have the Pulitzer? I think he won the Pulitzer.
I think so. Or a National Book Award or both.
He's like,
or something.
I'm Matthew Desmond now. Like capital M. Here now you're gonna get 200 pages from me directly.
Yeah.
Which
and I didn't even like the second book that much. Like but in part it was because, when you've written the other book. You're right. This was sort of like
it's
the
like
policy
he
implication.
knew people were going to go out and buy this book no matter what was in it. And so he put in that book what he really wanted to make sure that everybody took out of Evicted. He's like, I wrote this other book that's great. You might have missed the point. Here's the point.
Yes.
The system is bad. Okay, last question. I stole this from the New York Times by the book. If you could require the president of the United States to read one book, this current president, what would it be?
Oh, boy. All About Love by Bell Hooks. Take that, Trump.
Take that. That's a good one. That's a great one. Okay, party people. We're out of here today. We went long. I'm sorry, but hello. We had to talk about nerd clusters. Yes. Alexis Madrigal will be back on August 27th for our discussion of Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Neither of us have read the book, or you did read it.
No, I haven't. I have read Gathering Moss also by, but not that one.
So this is our first time. The episode's the 27th of August. People who have not yet read The Pacific Circuit, you should definitely read it. I also am going to do a huge plug for the audiobook because Alexis reads it. And as you've heard, he's got a great voice, high energy, really brings a lot to it. I had a great time with it. So if you wanted to know, yes, both options are good. Though the physical book has some pictures. So, there's a map, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you can get the digital stuff, but, got to let you know. Alexis, thank you so much for being here. This was awesome.
Hey, thank you. This is the most fun. Thank you so much.
I always want to be the most something. Everybody else, we will see you in the stacks. Thank you all so much for listening, and thank you again to Alexis Madrigal for being my guest. Alexis will be back on Wednesday, August 27th to discuss our book club pick, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. If you love this show and you want inside access to it, head to patreon.com/thestacks to join the Stacks Pack and subscribe to my newsletter at tracythomas.substack.com. Make sure you are subscribed to the Stacks wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're listening through Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating and a review. For more from the Stacks, follow us on social media at The Stacks Pod on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok, and check out our website at thestackspodcast.com. This episode of The Stacks was edited by Christian Duenas with production assistance from Waikia Freelo. Our graphic designer is Robin McCrite, and our theme music is from Tagirigis. The Stacks is created and produced by me, Tracy Thomas.